to the Marketing Nomad Show, the fun pit stop for all things Instagram, where I also share my entrepreneurial journey, some of my lessons, wins, and challenges along the way, so it can inspire you to get started and grow on Instagram as well. Welcome to the Marketing Nomad Show, Ken. How are you doing today?
I'm really good, Prit. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing fantastic too. How's the weather like in Sydney?
Currently, it is very unusual. So, this time of year, it's very hot, sometimes humid. This year, it's been raining. And to be completely honest, compared to this time last year when we had really bad bushfires, the rain has been very pleasant. So, I'm not complaining.
Oh, that's beautiful. Okay, Ken, first off, let me kind of shout out a small introduction. So, for those of you who are listening to this podcast, this is the Marketing Nomad Show, and I am your host, Prit. Today, I have gay dating and relationship coach plus expert Ken Reid with us. Now, Ken, can you tell us a little bit about, how you started this business and what led you to it, what were the circumstances, and why are you so passionate about what you do?
Oh, wow. Okay. I feel like this will be a bit of a life story. So, here we go. Basically, growing up as a gay man, I was very closeted, which is a term to mean in denial of the fact that I was gay for a very long time. And it was about 2019 when, I thought things were going really well with my life. Traditionally, I was a marketing manager for a small startup. I got a pay rise, a new job title as a marketing manager. I was thinking to myself, wow, career-wise, I'm doing great. I also was really doing well with my social life. Everything on the surface looked really good. Yet I couldn't help the fact that I was feeling incredibly lonely. And I was like, oh, I should really look into this and should really do something about it. So I started dating more actively. Now, on the surface, everything looked good. But deep down, I knew there was something really wrong. And it wasn't to do with my gender. It was more that I was just feeling like, I don't think that I'm doing something that I'm really passionate about. I'd catch myself at work, despite doing really well, and I'd find myself in my off hours just scrolling through Google, looking at like, what are the signs of success? What are the signs of happiness? And it was almost a very small introduction to self-development, because at that time I could tell that I didn't realize it at the time, but I was not in a happy way at all. I was clearly very much looking for something more than what I was doing. So I started dating properly in about February of 2019, fell in love with a guy who I really, really wanted to be in a relationship with. We had a very hot and heavy first month together, and he gave me plenty of signs that he wanted to be in a relationship with me, until one day he said to me, you know what, I don't think I want to be in a relationship. It's just, it's too much for me. And don't worry, you'll find someone magnificent down the road. And despite only knowing him for a month, that devastated me for about 6 months. And I think, coupled with my own internal dilemma of not really being happy with my job, I was in such a bad way where I just lost all interest for work. I was not in a healthy way at all. I was so depressed and emotionally down. And I was trying to find ways to just get over it. Because, we hear people when they're heartbroken, people just say, well, get over it. How can you still be thinking about that person? Especially when it's been a month, because people might think, oh, well, you were never actually boyfriends or girlfriends. You were never in a relationship. So why are you grieving so much? Well, I was, and I was not in a good way at all. And so I looked a lot for ways to try and help me out. There were no resources available that I could find specifically for gay men. Most of it was for heterosexual couples, which is fine. It just didn't help me though, because I didn't have anyone I could be like, okay, how do I deal with this particular situation, and how do I avoid it in the future? And so I, after 6 months of just being not in a good way, I went on holidays, read A New Earth by Eckhart Tolle, which just sort of changed my life completely. And I also had a very innocent comment made by one of my colleagues because at the time I'd just be blabbering on about relationships and why I was so interested in them. And she said, Ken, I think you should go into psychology because you really like talking about relationships. And I was like, oh, wow, that seems like a really good idea. So I invested 2020 into a diploma of counseling instead because that was more of the one-on-one interaction. And it was the only course offered in Australia that was online. When COVID hit, everything else got wiped out. No counseling courses were offered, just this one. And then 6 months after that, in about June of 2020, I quit my job. I was like, nah, I'm done. I'm going to pursue relationship. I thought I was going to do relationship counseling. And then I found Boss Graham Academy, which is where I met you. And it gave me an idea to be a coach, but I wasn't sure if I was qualified, if my dating experiences would actually be a qualification in and of itself. And I remember when I was only at like 90 followers on Instagram when my first client approached me with a situation so similar to mine. And I had to really ask myself a hard question. Do I refer this guy on to a therapist who's trained, or do I not only charge him, but work with him as a test to see if I can actually do this job? And sure enough, I chose to work with him and charge him for my time. And thanks to that period that we spent together, that 4-month beta testing, he overcame the grief of what he was going through. He actually quit seeing his therapist, who wasn't really helping him overcome that challenge, and he actually got closure with the guy who was stringing him along. So that really proved to me, results aside, that I could do something. And internally, I felt so good, and I knew, like, off that, I was like, "Yep, I'm meant to do this," and here I am now.
Ah, that's such a beautiful story. Honestly, I listened to your story, and I feel that with every business start or with every transformation in life, there's always a heartbreak behind it. I don't know why that is, but I feel like that heartbreak is always leading us to a different path, changing our life, and definitely for the better. So I'm so glad that you found your calling. I personally know Ken, and I've been seeing his Instagram posts, and I've been watching him from the Boss Graham Academy where we joined together. That he is amazing at what he does. He is so passionate. He absolutely goes out of his way for his clients, and it is just so amazing to see how you are so dedicated to help other people in your situation or who are battling their own relationship problems. Now, coming to sort of the business aspect of, your coaching business, I know that you said you went for a diploma, and coincidentally, that was the only one that stayed on. But other than that, what were some of the challenges that you faced while starting your business? Was it maybe the stigma of it? Was it, what was it that was hindering your first steps?
That's an amazing question. I have to be honest, it was just labeling myself as a gay relationship coach. For us growing up, particularly for me, it's hard, to identify as gay and actually have the acceptance of other people around you. That's one thing. But putting yourself out there as an expert for our community is a whole nother ball game completely, because we as a community don't have many role models that we can look up to for, relationships, health, wealth, life coaching. It's growing, which is fantastic. And at the same time, we are also a community that is going through a lot of challenges. We have had a tendency to have been judged growing up. Therefore, we also project that onto others, including ourselves. So I was so scared, thinking, oh my goodness, I am so nervous to put myself out there for two reasons. My inner critic was going crazy. I was thinking, I'm going to be judged by my own community, and I'm so worried that I'm never going to be led into certain countries that are homophobic. What am I going to do? But then I started and I just realized, oh, that shit's nonsense anyways. So I think for me, it's been a purely psychological challenge. I think the actual business building components of it have been fairly straightforward because I've never been I've never been bad at business building. Like even when I was working across different jobs, especially the last one, which was a startup, for me, that setup is very straightforward. What's really hard though, Prit, and I'm sure you'd appreciate this too as a fellow entrepreneur, it's just that you are fighting yourself for a large part of it. Building a business is the biggest personal development that you'll ever do. And I think that outside of a relationship, you're constantly challenged by the next version of yourself. Our egos want to keep us stuck at yesterday when we're like, no, I'm here today. I want to do the new thing. So you're constantly fighting a barrier. And mine were, judgment focused. I've had fears, like even like we were talking about before jumping on here, the masterclass, for me, I was scared of failure. But fear of failure is also fear of success, because you're denying yourself the opportunity to actually grow and to learn from feedback. So my current fear is now, it's no longer about, getting clients. It's no longer, can I actually charge them, a lot of money? My current challenge is, okay, how can I hit my first 10K month? Which I know I'm not far from. It's just like, that's the next thing on the horizon.
I really think that this was such a powerful speech. To be honest with you, when you said, the fear of failure is actually the fear of success, and how you've battled your own mindset challenges. I think that mindset is one of the biggest challenge when it comes to starting your own business. Like you said, you're always kind of hindered by the ego. You always want to stay stagnant because that feels comfortable. It's just as simple as that. And you're scared of the unknown, you're scared of putting yourself out there. And yes, even I probably did not face it to your magnitude, because I know that for you it comes from a lot of childhood trauma as well, and putting
Yeah.
yourself out there, and the fear of judgment and stuff like that. But I can definitely relate when you say that there was a lot of internal things that you needed to battle out before you could actually put yourself out there and continue. So I'm glad you actually took the final step. You took that first step, sorry, the first step to putting yourself out there. And it has been so nice to see your journey so far. So, coming to, one of the challenges that you talked about, and that is, the fact that you can't stay stagnant. So how is it that you've been putting the next step forward when I know that you said you were first scared of getting the first client, then you were scared of charging him, then you were scared of labeling yourself as an expert. So how did you manage to gain the confidence through this journey?
Another great question. I think that it was really a matter of just believing that I had what I needed to succeed. So when I had my first client, before he even before he was even open to paying for my services, he asked me, "What experiences are you bringing to the table?" And I had to be, look, I'll be completely honest with you. My background is in marketing. I'm not a fully qualified counselor yet. I'm certainly not a coach properly, in the sense that I'm still learning how to do this. And I've got a very deep personal dating experience, because over the last 2 to 3 years, I've done a lot of dating. I've done a lot of learning. I've done a lot of healing, and I know a lot about how to date oneself successfully. And I've done a lot of research on this, which I can share from these particular resources. And that was enough to obviously convince him to work with me, which is fantastic. And I think so, but then again, like, even after I got those results, there was still an inner critic in me, my ego still being like, oh, that was just a fluke. And I think part of the process of overcoming that inner critic, that ego, for me, it was journaling. I meditate and journal every day. I also, as a trained therapist now, I know a lot of techniques to help me even go, where does this fear come from? Or what trauma has led me to feeling this particular way? And I've started to become very acutely aware of when my mind is telling me something, or like when my gut is telling me something. For example, and I'm sure you might have experienced this too, Prit, I recognize overwhelm now is a sign that I'm off course. So meaning that I know that my journey is, I want to become like, I really want to grow this business to help the gay community, the broader LGBTQIA plus community. I really want to help us in a big way by growing this business to incorporate a variety of coaches to help us in areas of life. So with that in mind, I know that when I'm in overwhelm and I'm feeling stressed, I'm just like, oh my God, there's too many good ideas. I don't know what to choose. That's my brain telling me, you're off course. You need to go back to what you were doing and do the next thing that's really hard and get on with it. And I think one of the things that made that process really easy too is investing in a coach and actually getting someone to just be like, okay, this is what you need to do to overcome the challenge of what you're going through. So, for example, the challenge of doing the masterclass for me was just that it was very much a thing where it really triggered my not enoughness, which is a thing that we often use in therapy to describe someone who doesn't feel like they're enough for a partner, they're enough at school, they're enough for their parents. For me, it was, I don't have enough followers. I don't have enough client testimonials. I don't have enough X, Y, Z. And so it put me off from starting. And I thought, oh, I need to do all this community building. I need to wait until I have X number of followers. I need to do all this content creation. And ultimately nothing happened. I did all these lives. Yes, I got a few clients on, which was amazing, but I wasn't opening myself up to serving the broader community. I was keeping myself stuck in my little corner, growing corner on Instagram. So I think a lot of this has boiled down to growing self-awareness of how my body responds and my mind responds to certain elements of challenge, reflecting on it and adjusting over time.
Absolutely. I completely 100% resonate with every single thing that you just said. Even for me, as part of my journey as an entrepreneur, the main part of it was not learning how to build a business, was to understand myself, to learn about intuition, to learn about how to put my needs first, my own personal needs first. So I definitely resonate with every single aspect. And I feel like this is something that I've come to a realization very recently, that hey, my journey for the last 2 years have actually been about me and not about building my business or my tribe or my membership program or whatnot. So I definitely, I'm so happy that you brought that up as well. And yes, journaling, meditation, these are things that I also personally have started to incorporate into my life for the last 6 months. And it has been transformative. God, it has been amazing. And I keep recommending it to everyone. I think before I used to kind of wonder, okay, what does journaling do? You're just putting your thoughts on paper, but
Yeah.
it is life changing. So I'm glad you brought that up for people who are listening. If you are, debating about journaling, Ken says it, I say it too. Start, when you start, you will actually realize how transformative that is.
Yeah, I'd add to that too, Prit, by saying, and this is something I tell my clients who I get them to journal, is because it's one thing to identify what's holding you back. It's another thing to rewrite what's holding you back. In other words, if you identify, like for me, it was just like, oh, I'm not enough. I reprogram that to, I am enough. I am successful. I don't need to wait till I have all my ducks lined up in a row. I have everything I need right now. And that calmed me down. It made me focus on what was a priority rather than all this other crap. And I think that's the value of journaling, in that you almost become your own therapist.
Absolutely. I've definitely felt that my intuition has heightened ever since I started journaling. And I'm more aware, like if I'm feeling overwhelmed, as you said, I know, okay, well, I process it, what's happening there. Why am I feeling that way? And there are steps that I now have in place. So that has only come about from journaling. So I am like a true believer in journaling right now. Now let's come a little bit to the technical aspects of business. Now, I know that you are a first mover in your industry. Okay, you're the first gay dating and relationship coach plus expert that I know of, and I know that there aren't many out there. There are probably a handful. So, how did it feel being the first person in your industry, and how does it feel right now? Being the very few, I mean, I think you're the only expert at the moment, if I'm not wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong. But how does it feel right now, and what were some of the challenges with that aspect?
Yeah, I've noticed that there's definitely it was very challenging in the beginning because you see an established niche has a few things going for it in that, for example, business coaches, there's many that you can look up to, where obviously people who follow Vanessa Lau, for instance, and she's one of many brilliant business coaches too. So it's very, I'd say it's definitely easier to identify business coaches. Relationship coaches, on the other hand, I'd say we are growing, and we're definitely a field that I think requires a lot of growth for the reason that I think that there is a lot of misinformation out there too. And I feel like there's not enough people actually giving practical advice on how to create love that's really healthy for people. And I think that's a real challenge. And so within that, like I was reflecting on my own personal journey, I didn't see any gay dating coaches, at least not in Sydney, Australia. I mean, I understand that Australia is still a growing country. I know now, thanks to obviously collaborating with at least one fellow gay dating coach from America, that there are a few, which is beautiful and amazing. And I'm really grateful for that. But until I had met those people, I'm looking outside of my own box thinking, oh my goodness, where do I even go? Business coaches have Facebook groups. There's obviously like gay groups, but I think that even when it comes to communicating with people, when you've got a dedicated business page on Facebook where you're testing ideas with the people inside, that is so different from when you're entering gay groups where they have a combination of, challenges. And I think when it comes to relationships, it's deeply personal. You don't just go in there and be like, hey, anyone want some free dating advice? Anyone want me to go through and reflect on your past trauma to understand why it is that you're not getting the results you want out of your dating? So I think that there were a lot of challenges that I had that were unique in that I had to find people who already had an aligned audience, people who I could respect and connect with. And it's definitely not been easy, but it's gotten a lot better over time because as you keep growing, people just keep, you just meet with new people who stand out. They tell you about another person and you just sort of follow you follow the people from one person to another to grow and to, understand more of who's out there. And I think that's really allowed me to establish myself or continue to grow and establish myself within this growing network.
That's amazing. That's so amazing to hear that, being the first mover of your industry, I know that there are some unique challenges that you have faced. And I think knowing other people in your industry, people not necessarily from your own country, I think that has definitely, it really makes me feel happy knowing that that makes you confident and that has brought you about this journey as well. So, I wanted to also talk a little bit about, as you said, relationships, the entire aspect of it is deeply personal. And I think that, when people, especially solopreneurs and CEOs, with our time that we have, very limited time, I think that, when a new relationship comes about in our life, we find it hard to balance. And myself included, I think that there is a stigma that's going on that tells people that you are unable to balance. You can't balance a relationship and work. So, what are your thoughts on that?
You most certainly can balance both. I think it's really about how you communicate that with your partner. I think it's really interesting you should bring that up because I think the stigma around it doesn't properly address the problems that occur when you have people on both ends of the spectrum. For instance, you'll have the people who are really desperate to be with their partners all the time. And they may even be CEOs and entrepreneurs. Like they've got busy lives, but they just want more time with their partner. Then on the flip side, you've got doctors, lawyers, consultants who run very busy lives, and yet their center of their universe, that's their job. That is their job, and their partners and love life are on the periphery to that too. And funnily enough, both people tend to be the ones that actually get together the most, because without going too much into the theory of it, a lot of, particularly amongst gay men and even in heterosexual couples too, I've observed amongst other researchers as well, that there is a very big tendency for each and every one of us to reenact our own childhood with our relationships. So we'll often see that if we've grown up with, like, for example, an overbearing mother or an emotionally withdrawn father, that plays out in dating. For instance, I have been the kind of person who's dated a lot of men in the past who are very, much revolving around their work. Like, that is their center of focus. And as a consequence, it's really been up to me to be like, well, how do I feel about that? Do I deserve someone who actually treats me with more respect? And so I've dated guys on the extreme opposite of that too, who've just, been chasing me and wanting to be with me. And it's been really, and for me as a dater, I'm like, I actually find both ends quite frustrating, to be completely honest. I require more consistency, because if I'm getting someone who's texting me more than 3 times a day versus someone who's just wanting to message me once every 48 hours, it creates a real disparity. And so what I require now and what I'm learning is, how to communicate with my partners and be like, okay, listen, you want to date me? That's great. I want to date you too. I just need to let you know, I'm the kind of guy where I actually really like consistency, because when I don't get that, I start to develop anxiety, and it also makes me question whether or not I want to continue involving myself with you. So I think the challenge for a lot of people who have never had really enough consistent love in their life, from their parents particularly, they have a tendency to chase people who put their jobs first, because they are so these people, ironically enough, who are job first, have usually been in a situation where they've actually been traumatized by commitment, by love. They don't like the look of it, and yet they're incredibly lonely. So they will still seek out partners, but at the same time, they want to push them away and have a lot of distance and space to feel safe. So it creates a really unfortunate paradigm between the people who want the love and the people who want the love but are afraid of love. So that's often where we see a lot of people, regardless of gender, getting stuck. And that's why there's, on the surface, you see people who are married to their jobs and people who are like on top of their partners all the time too. It's that middle ground that we're looking for.
That makes sense. That definitely makes sense now. Now that I'm looking back and thinking of it, but do you think that there is a right and wrong in approaching this? Like, I know that you said people who keep their job first, they tend to be that way because they've been traumatized in the past, and then people on the other end of the spectrum bring their own kind of trauma. How do you find middle ground? Is it through working through your issues? And B, if you are on either ends of the spectrum, is there any right or wrong to it?
Let me answer B first. Honestly, it's only right and wrong. If it's only right if you both agree to it and you're both okay with it. It's only wrong if one of you is like, I'm not getting my needs met. I need to sort this out for myself. It should never be you dictating to your partner, this is what you should do. No, you, as in me, and you, like, we need to individually be like, okay, I'm feeling anxious. That's not the feeling I really want to have, because it creates stress. Stress goes to my belly. That makes me feel all these unpleasant feelings and actually is known to cause health issues. Do I want that in my life? Probably not. So it's time to have a conversation with my partner and let them know, look, when this happens, this is making me feel this. I really need to let you know, because if in order for me to continue this, I need to see this. And if they don't do that, then you've got to accept reality and accept that this person is who they are. It's what it's what they love. If that's their job, that's okay, but you're not going to be their priority. So I think radical acceptance is required. Now, in terms of coming to middle ground, to answer your first question, oh boy, I think the simplest answer is you require teamwork. You know, yes, you could send your partner to a therapist. Yes, you could send your partner to someone like me who can help them through their baggage and also help them to overcome those challenges to get to where they need to be. But what's the point if they don't want to do it for themselves? You know, the way I liken this, did you ever do group assignments at university?
Yes, yes, I did.
What was that experience like for you?
Yeah, everything came onto me.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's very similar to a relationship dynamic in that the group project, the assignment that you're putting together is the relationship. And, you know, you in this case are the partner who's doing all the effort, all the love, and you've got the personal people in that framework who are just not pulling their weight. And so it can boil down to you being like, look, I'm doing all this work. I'm feeling frustrated. I really just need to let you know because this is making it really hard for me. That's one relationship dynamic that you can have. The alternative, which I know I've had before in group work as well, is when you're with people who really want to succeed with the group assignment, who want to succeed with the relationship. They're both so much like, yes, I want to be with you. I want to make this work. And they make it work. So they really do take the time to actually unpack a lot of that uncomfortable crap with their partner. And that, I think, is where a lot of us really want to start developing our relationships. And I think there are going to be some issues which, are going to be unavoidable. They're going to be unsolvable. I know for me, one of my unsolvables is like the idea of someone says to me, hey, Ken, I really love family. I'd love to meet yours. I'll be like, hell no, not happening. And it's not, and it's not for traditional reasons. It's not for like, oh, I'm scared of, coming out to my family. I've done that. No, it's more just the fact that I'm like, I don't feel comfortable with that. So I think that, you know, it's about recognizing what you can't resolve and working through the stuff that you can.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's such a beautiful thought. I think that when you uh, have been through, personal trauma, and you've been basically, you are, the kind of person who puts your job first because of personal trauma, and also, of course, on the other end of the spectrum, you kind of feel like something's wrong with you, and how do you get to the middle ground? And I really like that you say that there are some things that are solvable, there are some things that are not going to be solvable, and that's okay. That's completely okay as long as you recognize it. So that deeply resonated with me, and I think that you've really kind of hit home a point where it's okay to be one kind of person as long as you know that you are that kind of person. And it also, you have to understand what you bring to the table as well. So balancing a romantic relationship along with work, as Ken says, guys, is not a humongously crazy task. It can be done. And what are three tips that you can give my podcast listeners so that we can wrap this episode up?
With tips, would that be around dating, relationships, or balancing work and relationships?
I think I would say balancing work and a new relationship, because I think the excitement of a new relationship usually gets people to focus completely on it.
Yeah, great way to frame it. Okay, my first tip is be realistic. Be realistic and think about, your life as it is right now. So by that I mean the honeymoon phase of a relationship is 6 months to 2 years. Enjoy that ride. It's going to be fun. And also realize it's not the relationship. That's the beginning. And then once you're done with that, you hope to be with your sexy best friend. That's when you have to really work through those challenges and issues. That being said, point two, don't focus too heavily on, what the outcome is. Yes, you are working towards being in a relationship. That's lovely. What you're also doing is working with your partner in the moment. Too often, I have seen so many people, bend over backwards for people to try and make it work when in reality, in the moment, it's not working because you're bending over backwards. So I think that in itself, what I mean by that is it's important to be mindful in the present of when, you're not getting your needs met. And going back to work, you know, if your partner is just constantly like, oh, I'm busy, we'll meet up sometime, that's dismissive. You know, that's not really fair. At least I don't think that's particularly fair. And I think we often say to ourselves, oh, well, they're busy, you know, they've got a busy life. If it doesn't feel good to you, you have a right to call that stuff out. And then with number three, I would say, I just think that it's really good in the first date to really talk a bit about what your life looks like. For me, one thing I always do with the guys that I date, and I did this yesterday too. In fact, I said, look, you know, I got to be honest, you know, my life is looking like this. I don't really want to be communicating with you all the time on the phone. I like maybe just once, you know, a week. We'll catch up once a week at, you know, max for me right now. That sounds good to you? Great. If not, let's talk about it. If it really is a big of a deal breaker, maybe we aren't really meant to be together, and that's okay. So I think setting those terms and conditions, and not to be too businesslike or like a job interview, I think, but just at the least sort of giving your partner a really good idea. It's like, hey, this is my life. This is what I'm in. This is what, you know, we're both in for. So if we, and I think having that expectation that, you know, look, I really like what I see. Of course, as we are developing this as well as our jobs, I would like the opportunity to obviously meet more of you, to see more of you over time and take it from there. Everybody's pace is going to be different. Everybody's, you know, pace is going to be different. But what I know that I like, given where I'm at with my business and with everything else, is I like to know what my destination is with my partner from date one. Just being like, it's kind of like this. I actually said this analogy to my one of my clients recently, and he really liked it. I said, it's like you're in a Tesla, which has got a manual steering wheel, which can then go automatic as well. You want on the first date to be putting in your destination on the GPS. But then the other thing too is you both want to be hands on the steering wheel and then allowing for both of you to be offering roughly 50% of the exchange, that effort over the course of your dating and your relationships. Because if it's 80-20 on one side or the other, that's unbalanced and you're off course. So I think for the most part in that dating process, you want to just be sort of on autopilot, just cruising along. And if a problem does come up, time to autocorrect. And not addressing it just means you just keep going further off course. So they're my 3 tips.
Oh, that's absolutely wonderful. I'm pretty sure that my podcast listeners, and me included, are definitely going to keep that in our stride and, you know, definitely make note of it. It's definitely going to help me. Definitely can. So, well, thank you so much for coming on my show, Ken. It's been amazing having you, learning about your journey, why you're so passionate about what you do, the challenges you faced, and, you know, also giving us tips on how to balance a romantic relationship along with our crazy work life. Ken, if, you know, my audience wants to reach out to you, can you tell them a few of your links, maybe your website or your Instagram page that they can find you?
Yeah, so I'm mostly on Instagram. They can follow me at ken.reid_relationship.coach. And my website is Ken Reid Relationship Coach.
I'm going to be putting all these links at the bottom, and also a lot more information about Ken as well. So feel free to check out the show notes, guys. And if you want to, you know, get more dating advice from Ken, definitely follow him on Instagram. I definitely do. And it's been amazing watching him grow. It's been amazing watching him with his tips. And guys, on a side note, his tips have actually helped me too. So for those of you out there, please do follow Ken. He's amazing and he's really good at what he does. Ken, thank you so much for joining the show. Any last words for my listeners?
Yeah, I would say, look, it doesn't matter what gender you are. I think at the end of the day, you know, we owe it to ourselves to be with people who light us up. So, as Marie Kondo teaches when it comes to furniture, you know, if the people in our lives don't spark us, you know, joy 80% of the time, it's time to consider where they stand in your life.
Wow, that's really powerful, Ken. On that note, guys, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. I certainly did. Definitely made me reflect on a lot of things, and I'm definitely going to keep Ken's tips in mind. Thank you, Ken. For those of you out there who are listening to this, I'm going to put Ken's links in the show notes again. Feel free to reach out to him on Instagram. Thank you guys for listening all the way up until here. I will catch you guys in the next episode. Bye-bye. Okay, hold on.